Hi, my name is Zara Bibi.
Hi, my name is Hannah Riaz.
Hi, my name is Malika Mahmood, and this is our poster presentation on grammatical analysis in two texts on mental health.
So this poster focuses on the grammatical analysis of two extracts, which is a New York Times broadsheet article and a brochure. Brochures often include factual information which is engaging with the reader, and both of our extracts focus on mental health, like panic disorders and panic attacks. And their symptoms and treatments. So our aim is to examine the purpose of using types of sentences, modal verbs, and the types of subordinate clauses in complex sentences. The styles of each text allow us to compare the function of the text.
So moving on to data, we collected two sources of data on the topics mental health from the first one's from the New York Times article, and the second is a brochure about panic disorder. We chose these specific extracts as they offer a different style in terms of the usage of sentence types and modal verbs. The differences allow the writer to express the functions of the text. When we looked at the methods that were used to carry out our analysis, we identified the verbs which allowed us to identify the sentences into complex, compound, and simple. Then we identify the subordinate clauses within the complex sentence.
To begin with, I'll be discussing complex sentences as they are the most frequent across the article and the brochure, and we can see that there are more complex sentences in the article. This is because articles usually consist of detailed information on specific topics, and in this case, it is panic attacks. From our analysis, complex sentences are used to describe what a panic attack is and the way it feels, like the physical symptoms that an individual may suffer. This creates basically an overall in-depth analysis of mental health, and subordinate clauses are also used in complex sentences to allow extra detail, for example, through the use of relative clauses. And now moving on to compound sentences, they are useful in articles because they help create a smooth transition of detailed information, and this is why there are more compound sentences in the article in comparison to the brochure. An example from the article is when it describes the physical symptoms an individual may suffer during a panic attack, and it also notes how symptoms can vary person to person. We can see this all through a coordinating conjunction, which helps to link two clauses. However, brochures tend to have factual information in shorter sentences, so that's why we do not need two ideas to be linked through a compound sentence like is basically be done through an article.
So from the findings of our graph, we can see there are more simple sentences using the brochure than the article. This is to be expected of the brochure because the brochure offers short, concise, simple information to engage and quickly inform the reader, which is the ultimate function of simple sentences. And articles tend to offer more detail and depth, which is why there are fewer simple sentences.
For this part of the presentation, I'll be highlighting how different subordinate clauses in complex sentences can construct different ideas regarding to the writer's point of view. I will also be discussing the findings that we have around the poster, which is in our bar charts, and the types of subordinate clauses. To begin with, we looked at relative clauses, which can resemble another major word class, which is adjectives, in that they modify nouns. In the article, there are 8 relative clauses, which is more than the brochure, which only has 1. The biggest difference in this is the frequency, so we identified how and why the article has a lot more. This is because it has longer noun phrases, which allow for additional information to be added, and these longer noun phrases bring out the nominalization of special discourse, emphasizing how the writer's use of these noun phrases allows for more information to be added. Usually when relative clauses are introduced, the pronoun which is often used, giving us more information about the text and the general nature of anxiety circumstance. Next, we looked at WH clauses, which provide similar contributions to the text as they begin with who, what, and where, providing more on the subject. There are only 2 WH clauses in the article, whereas the brochure has none. This explores how the brochure does have shorter and more concise sentences without any additional information being added. again showing that it is less detailed in comparison to the article. Furthermore, we looked at ED and past participle clauses, which allow for additional and contextual information to be added to a sentence or to a subordinate clause through the use of ed, which is usually added to the root of a verb. They can also be used in similar ways to passive relative clauses, and they can shorten a sentence down, but they still give the same amount of information. It's just a past tense that gives us more context on the timings and the whereabouts. After that, we looked at that clauses, which are reported speech. In both of our extracts, it is used indirectly, and both extracts do have for that clauses. The writer's use of these explains the effect of panic attacks on people. Example of this in the article is that people may worry that they are going insane. The use of that in this particular sentence explores how it is indirect speech because of the word people as well. It's not directly speaking to somebody, it's just referring to somebody else. Another example of this in the brochure is researchers have found that. Again, this is another form of indirect speech, as it talks about researchers and not directly speaking to anybody. This emphasizes the information that is found by other people in regards to panic attacks. Moreover, we looked at adverbial clauses, and there are 10 clauses altogether, 6 in the brochure and 4 in the article. Adverbial clauses tend to help to point out time, event, action, manner, event, or state. Again, they provide a lot more information, but in a concise way, which is why it would be useful for a brochure. After that, we looked at ing clauses, which again are similar to adverbial clauses because they point out the timings of things that are happening, and they grant us specific information alluding to specific times. And the article and the brochure both use these in similar ways to comment on panic attacks, as there are 6 in each piece of text.
Now I'll be discussing modal verbs. A modal verb is a type of verb through context. Through context, a modality is introduced such as possibility and ability. Possibility is shown through the verbs could, may, and might. However, overall, these 3 verbs are used less in the brochure than the article, which is because this brochure would have less room for possibility, as it contains information from medical researchers. Therefore, it's important for the writer to ensure the information is accurate and clear than leaving readers without the full information. Modal verbs also help accommodate the points of each writer whilst being used in different contexts, which we can see when can and cannot is used in the article to explain the ability of panic attacks, as the article shows you how it can affect you mentally and physically. However, the brochure uses can in the context of explaining the effectiveness of the treatment of panic disorders when using medication. So both writers are showing ability of a subject, but are using it to bring across different points.
So to conclude our discussion, we discussed a clear division in grammatical and syntactical structures of 2 texts, which is a brochure and article. And overall, the article has more complex sentences, which provided an in-depth analysis and account of educational information on the effects of panic attacks and panic disorders.
So this shows that the use of an article allows the writer to portray a detailed account of panic disorders. However, in the brochure, the higher number of simpler sentences and the adverbial and ing clauses do allow the brochure to give a more clear, concise, and structured account in comparison to the article.
So our findings allowed us to find out how types of subordinate clauses and complex sentences allowed important information to be included, and how modal verbs in different contexts reinforce each writer's point. The variation of grammar here in the extracts are significant, as different usage of modal verbs and sentence types and the amount of each in the extracts all contribute to helping accommodate the writer of the brochure's effort to deliver information and give advice for panic disorder quickly and clearly, and the writer of the article's effort to explain panic attacks and its symptoms in detail. Ultimately, how grammatical differences contribute to understanding 2 contrasting text styles. That concludes our presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.